My parents thought they could force me out of the million-dollar business I built from scratch. They thought their name on the incorporation documents gave them ultimate power. So, while they were upstairs in the boardroom planning my exit, I was in the basement, planning my revenge. This is the story of how I secretly moved my entire company, every client, every employee, every single line of code over 3 months, culminating in one final overnight transfer. I left them with nothing but an empty building, a mountain of debt, and a lesson they'd never forget. Every great company starts with a spark. Mine started in a cramped college dorm room, fueled by cheap coffee and an obsession with building something that mattered. This wasn't some class project. It was my life. I poured every ounce of my energy, my savings, and my soul into it. For the first 2 years, I was the CEO, the coder, the janitor, you name it. I'll never forget the thrill of signing my first real client. The one who took a chance on a 21-year-old with nothing but a laptop and a vision. That first check wasn't just money, it was validation. It was proof this crazy idea had legs. By year 3, we were profitable. By year 5, we were a $1 million company with a dozen employees and a waiting list of clients. It was a rocket ship, and I was in the cockpit. And that S when my parents stepped in. They had provided a small loan early on, a gesture of family support, or so I thought. Now that the company was a success, they wanted to be more involved. They framed it as helping me manage the growth, bringing their seasoned experience to the table. Looking back, I see it for what it was: the first move in a chess game I didn't even know I was playing. The real shift happened when my younger sister, Sarah, graduated from college with a business degree. My parents insisted she join the company. "She needs a place to start, a family business to grow into," my father would say. I was hesitant. Sarah had never shown any real interest in my work. To her, it was just my nerdy little project. But to keep the peace, I agreed. They weren't asking, they were telling. Just like that, Sarah got a fancy title, VP of Strategy, in a corner office. She had zero experience, but she had the right last name. That was the beginning of the end. My work life and my personal life, once separate, bled into one another in the most toxic way possible. Business meetings turned into family therapy sessions, where old grudges were rehashed. My decisions, the very ones that had guided the company to success, were now constantly second-guessed. I'd propose a new software update, and my father would turn to Sarah and ask, "What do you think, honey?" Her ideas, often based on a single article she'd skimmed, were suddenly given the same weight as my years of in-the-trenches experience. It was maddening. They were making emotional decisions, not business decisions, and it was poisoning the company culture. The worst part? It was the slow, creeping feeling of being erased from my own life's work. I'd built the house brick by brick, and now they were redecorating and planning to give the master bedroom to someone else. I'd lead a 6-month project, working nights and weekends with my team to land a huge client. And at the celebration dinner, my mother would toast Sarah's incredible negotiating skills. The team knew the truth. They'd shoot me sympathetic looks, but the resentment was a low hum that never went away. I felt trapped, caught between loyalty to my family and the integrity of the business I had bled for. The final betrayal wasn't a quiet suggestion or a passive-aggressive jab. It was a cold-blooded execution. They called a board meeting, which was just me, my parents, and Sarah in the conference room. My father, with a calmness that chilled me to the bone, slid a folder across the table. "We're restructuring," he said, avoiding my eyes. "The board has decided that for the next phase of growth, the company needs a new style of leadership." He went on, spewing corporate jargon that sounded bizarre coming from him. He talked about synergy and long-term vision. Then came the kill shot. Sarah was being promoted to CEO. My mother chimed in, her voice unnaturally soft. "She has the degree, sweetie. It looks better to investors." They were offering me a new role, Chief Technical Officer. It sounded important, but we all knew it was a demotion. I would report to my little sister, my creation in her hands. As a final insult, they offered an alternative, a tiny buyout, a fraction of what the company was worth, for my founding contribution. They mistook my passion for weakness. They saw my years of sacrifice not as a foundation of ownership, but as a sunk cost they could buy on the cheap. In that sterile, silent room, something inside me shattered. But as I looked at their expectant faces, another feeling rose through the pain. Clarity. The fight wasn't for my title. The fight wasn't to convince them of my worth. They had made it clear that blood wasn't thicker than water. It was just a tool to be leveraged for control. In that moment, I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling strategic. I realized I couldn't win by playing their game. The company they wanted wasn't the one I had built. The company I built wasn't the name on the door. It was the people, the code, and the clients. And that was something I could take with me. I sat through the rest of that meeting in a fog of cold fury. I nodded. I said I'd think about it. And I walked out of that office. The second the door clicked shut, the victim was gone. The strategist took her place. I didn't go home to cry. I went to a quiet coffee shop, pulled out a new notebook, and started drawing. My parents and Sarah thought this was a corporate takeover. They were playing checkers. I was about to play chess. They thought the company's value was its brand name and its bank account, all things tied to the legal entity they controlled. What they completely overlooked was that the true value of a service company is its people, its intellectual property, and its client relationships. They own the shell. I own the soul. And I was about to perform an extraction. My first call was in tea to a friend. It was to a corporate lawyer I had on retainer, someone with zero connection to my family. I laid out the whole ugly situation. I asked one question. Can I move my clients and employees to a new company without getting sued into oblivion? This is where my paranoia paid off. I had been meticulous about our client contracts. Buried in the legalese, I had included specific assignment and novation clauses. My father once called it unnecessary. I called it a lifeboat. These clauses laid out a procedure for assigning the contract to a new entity. My lawyer confirmed it was possible, but it would be a legal tightrope walk. One wrong step could mean breaching my fiduciary duties to the company, and I'd be the one facing a lawsuit. But possible was all I needed to hear. With that, Project Arc was born. It wouldn't be a literal overnight coup. The final move would be swift, but the setup was a meticulous 3-month clandestine operation. Month 1 was about building the vessel. I used a clean laptop and a burner phone. I formed a new LLC under a generic name, completely untraceable to me. I registered a new domain, set up new bank accounts with my own savings, and signed a short-term lease on a small, unassuming office across town. While my parents were picking out furniture for Sarah S.'s new CEO office, I was laying the foundation for their company's obsolescence. Month 2 was the most critical phase, securing the people. A company is its talent. My top 15 people lead devs, project managers, client specialists were the ones who built this thing with me. I knew I couldn't approach them as a group. That was too risky. So I did it one by one. I started with my lead developer, Mark. I met him for coffee, miles from our usual spots. I laid it all out. The betrayal, the plan for Sarah, the gutting of our culture. I didn't just offer him a job. I invited him to be a founding partner in our new venture. I offered him equity. I was asking him to co-own the future we'd always talked about. His eyes lit up. He'd seen the writing on the wall. He was in before I finished my pitch. One by one, I had that same honest conversation with my core team. This wasn't a mutiny for money. It was a rescue mission to save the soul of our work. By the end of the month, all 15 had secretly signed partnership agreements with the new company. They timed their resignations at the old company to take effect on the same day. D-Day. Month 3 was for the assets that truly mattered, the clients and the data. My core team, now my secret co-conspirators, helped begin the client transition. This took weeks of careful, legally vetted communication. My head of client relations, and I made personal calls to every single client. We explained that the core team they trusted was spinning off into a new, more agile company to better serve them. Then we sent the formal novation agreements. The response was overwhelming. The clients didn't care about the brand name, they cared about the results my team delivered. Out of 47 clients, 45 signed. Simultaneously, my tech team and I prepared for the digital migration. For years, I had built and managed our entire digital infrastructure. I knew every line of code. What my parents didn't know was that our disaster recovery plan included a secure, encrypted migration script. On the final night, we would use that script not to recover from a disaster, but to trigger one. The plan was to migrate all client databases, project code, and communication histories to our new secure servers. Once it was done, we'd sever the old company's access. It was a massive risk, but we ran simulations for weeks. We were ready. Okay, pause. Before I tell you what happened when my parents walked into that empty office, if this story is hitting home, if you've ever felt your hard work was being taken for granted, hit that like button and subscribe. It tells the algorithm that stories of fighting back are worth sharing. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. The final night felt like a scene from a heist movie. My core team and I gathered in our new, still bare office. The air was electric with adrenaline and defiant purpose. At exactly 2 a.m., we initiated the final migration script. For 3 hours, we watched progress bars crawl across our screens. At 5 a.m., it was done. The data was moved, the code was secured, and the client portals were redirected. With one last command, I wiped all admin-level access credentials on the old system, including my own, and replaced them with encrypted garbage. We had burned the bridge. D-Day. Monday morning. I can only imagine the scene. My parents and Sarah walk into the office, ready for their new era of leadership. They probably felt powerful. They would have walked past the empty desks of the 15 key employees who had all resigned, effective that morning. They likely figured it was a tantrum they could handle. Then they would be noticed the silence. The phones weren't ringing. The server room lights were blinking a steady, ominous red. Sarah, in her first act as CEO, would have tried to log into the client management system. Access denied. Panic sets in. My father calls their IT consultant, who, after hours of trying, delivers the grim news. The data wasn't just inaccessible, it was gone. The databases were empty shells. And then, on my old desk, my father would have found an envelope. Inside was my one-sentence resignation. Beneath it, a second document, a formal legal notice on the letterhead of my new company. It was a summary notification, informing them that, as per the terms of their own client contracts, 45 of their 47 clients had legally novated their agreements to my new corporate entity, effective that morning. The reality would have hit them like a tsunami. It wasn't just that their employees were gone or their data was gone. Their clients, the entire revenue stream of the company, were gone, all by the book. They were left with an office lease, some furniture, and a brand name that was now worthless. The company hadn't just been decapitated. Its entire circulatory system had been ripped out. The aftermath was what you'd expect. They scrambled. They called clients, who politely told them their relationship was with me and my team. They threatened lawsuits, but their own lawyers told them what I already knew. The client agreements were solid. They had been so focused on seizing the throne, they never checked if the kingdom would still be there. They tried to rebuild, but word gets around. The story of the mass exodus and the family betrayal made their company radioactive. Within 6 months, crushed by the lease and with no income, the company they stole from me filed for bankruptcy. It was a stark reminder that a company's value isn't in its furniture, it's in its human capital. Today, my new company is thriving. We're in a beautiful new office, and we're more profitable than the old company ever was. The 15 people who took that leap with me are now my partners, sharing in the success they helped create. The culture is everything we wanted: innovative, collaborative, and free of toxic family politics. Looking back, the betrayal from my own family was the most painful experience of my life, but it was also the catalyst for my greatest success. They thought ownership was a piece of paper. They forgot that true ownership is forged in the trenches. It's built on trust, loyalty, and the one thing you can't inherit or steal: respect. Now, I have to say this: my story is a cautionary tale, not a playbook. I took an insane risk that could have backfired spectacularly, and this path is riddled with legal landmines, like breach of fiduciary duty and contract disputes. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever felt undervalued or betrayed at work? Share your story below. It's important to know we're not alone. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to check out this next video on another tale of corporate justice. Thanks for watching.